Hello, I would like to take some time to define substantial effects doctrine and to distinguish it from what the court was doing before with direct and indirect effects doctrine and stream of commerce. So here we go. Here's a definition of substantial effects. I'll just read it to you. Under the substantial effects doctrine, Congress can regulate anything, even a thing that's local and intrastate in character, if not regulating that thing would harm the market, the public welfare, or frustrate Congress in its effort to regulate and foster economic exchange. So the test is very different. It isn't, is a thing local and intrastate in character. Under direct and indirect effects, anything, virtually anything, local and intrastate, was off limits for Congress. There were some exceptions. For example, if a thing local in character, like trains that only operated in a state, harmed interstate commerce, then Congress could regulate it. But something like manufacturing was not allowed. Remember, trains had to do with transportation, and Gibbons v. Ogden told us that navigation and transportation are part of commerce. So no longer is the test, is this thing local and intrastate in character? Rather, the test is, does this thing substantially affect? Does it have a substantial effect? Well, how do we know whether it has a substantial effect? Because the court says so? No, the court gives us a test, actually. The test is one of rationality. Can Congress, or the court actually, make a rational argument that a thing substantially relates to Congress, that not regulating this thing would lead to harm, and that regulating it, would lead to some benefit? It's just a rational nexus between the policy and the thing regulated. And we get that actually in the two cases that we've discussed so far. Substantial effects doctrine is really first articulated in NLRB versus Jones and Laughlin Steel. And this case sets the stage for substantial effects. I just want to read to you a selection, a quotation from that case. The court said, although activities may be intrastate in character when separately considered, if they have such a close and substantial relation to interstate commerce that their control is essential or appropriate to protect that commerce from burdens and obstructions, Congress cannot be denied the power to exercise that control. So in this case, obviously, NLRB v. Jones and Laughlin Steel dealt with labor relations, and Congress had identified only those industries and those companies that were engaged in interstate commerce, and said that workers for those companies may unionize and bargain collectively, and they can't be punished for joining unions. And the court makes a point of saying the Congress was very specific about applying this only to companies engaged in interstate commerce, not those who weren't. It made a rational argument connecting interstate commerce to labor and strictly circumscribed the labor market that would be regulated. Here's another one from United States v. Darby Lumber. This one brings the substantial effects doctrine into full force. Now, you might remember that Darby Lumber dealt with excluding goods from interstate commerce in which a company had not provided a minimum wage and hadn't imposed limits on weekly hours of labor. So, in other words, the Congress was attempting to do precisely what it had done in Hammer v. Dagenhart when it had excluded goods from the market that had been manufactured by children. Here, Congress is saying we're going to exclude goods from the market that had been manufactured by employees not paid a certain amount or who had worked more than a certain number of hours. This is what the court has to say. Congress is free to exclude from the commerce articles whose use in the states for which they are destined it may conceive to be injurious to public health, morals, or welfare, even though the state has not sought to regulate their use. So there, the court is simply saying Congress can do this. Bam, that's clearly overruling Hammer v. Dagenhart. And later the court says specifically Hammer is overruled. Furthermore, the court says later on, it says, it does not follow that Congress may not, by appropriate legislation, regulate interstate activities where they have a substantial effect on interstate commerce. So clearly the court is saying Congress may regulate things that are local and intrastate in character if they have that substantial effect. Okay, I thought that might help just clear some things up and define substantial effects doctrine for you. We're going to go on to a case called Wickert v. Filburn, in which the court considers congressional regulation of a thing not even intended for the interstate market. A thing not only wholly local in character, but that's not even in commerce. And I will see you then.